I have a question for you today. Who listens to Kingdom Speak? Well, we know preachers listen to Kingdom Speak, and we know saints listen to Kingdom Speak. You know another group of people who listen to Kingdom Speak? That's preachers' kids. PKs, we call them. This episode is for you. Welcome to Kingdom Speak with Pastor Daniel McKillop. Welcome into the studio, everyone. It's a nice, balmy, warm day here in the frozen tundra of Canada.
Easy. It's not that yet. I still have water in my pool.
Yeah.
Not ice.
No ice yet?
Yeah, we're good.
You know, depressingly, yeah, I'm just saying, something has changed in the last week in the air.
I love it.
You love it.
I love it.
Oh, man.
I love fall.
This is when producer Randy puts on his orange on and starts running around in the woods and
Killing things.
piling up animals for the winter's food, I guess, or something. That's what he says.
Venison.
Vanishing. Hey, guys, welcome back, and gals. So, I wanted to read a couple reviews. I know that surprises you. Listen to this. Number one favorite podcast, 5 stars. I absolutely love the podcast. It gives me another reason to say TGIF 10 on 10 would recommend. I was so excited to meet Brother McKillop at the Lawhorns conference. One request, ...
Uh-oh.
Bring Sister McKillop back.
Hey, what? There we go.
From Chris Dene on Apple Podcasts, and we will say amen to that. Bring Sister McKillop back.
Okay.
Can I get an amen? Amen. Can I get a hallelujah? Hallelujah.
So was that her actual handle, or did you pronounce her name properly?
No, that was the handle.
That was the handle.
One more great podcast. Words can't describe how great, full, and honored I am to listen to this podcast every morning I am at work. But numbers can. It's 10 on 10.
Ah.
And that's from Senior Frigil on Apple Podcasts. Thank you. And if you're working, get to work. We will say amen to you.
Can I get an amen? Amen. Can I get a hallelujah? Hallelujah.
It's been a few weeks since we had a guest.
It has. We're sorry.
They're just getting tired of us.
Bring somebody else.
The last unique episode, I would say, was when you were gone fishing.
Gone fishing.
Yeah, that was our last highlight.
See if that happens again. Yeah. Yeah.
So, I noticed you haven't done any more fishing trips in the last few weeks.
No, we've tried to make sure that I've been... I actually got one message in response to that episode, which was just a careening... Yeah. And he said, it's not hard to tell there was no adults in the room.
I like it.
Yeah, it was good.
Like it. See, we have to do that once in a while so you appreciate the premium.
Right.
Exactly right.
The host and the guests.
So today we do have a guest.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
He's in the Zoom house.
Mm-hmm.
He's in the Zoom house. We have with us today, all the way from Louisiana, Moss Bluff, right?
Yes, sir.
Pastor John Hare.
Yes, sir. Welcome.
Good morning, guys.
Hey, how are you today, sir?
Well, I'm very happy, very blessed, and what an honor it is to be with you.
Man.
Shout out to his tech support as well.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
We weren't recording.
Yeah, thank you for the honor.
Yeah, she, so for our audience listening, and we talked about this a lot when we first started, but the whole tech, what's the word I'm looking for? The calisthenics you go through before an episode recording. Bishop Odom probably takes the cake, Pastor Wade Townley. Mm-hmm. Those would be the top 2 who just managed to take an hour to get set up for an hour's episode. But they were these folks, these fine folks were all set up. We jumped into the call. And it's like, you know what? The camera's too far away. And they're like, oh, no.
Hey, is she still in the room?
She left, and I think she slammed the door.
It was 15 minutes of like moving boxes and tripods, and she did a great job. So congrats.
Well,
we should
shout
send
out
her-
to Juliana.
Yeah, we should send her some merch or something. It was
I'm a little bit on the tech side.
So this past February, I had the distinct honor of being with Pastor Hare for their youth weekend in Lake Charles, is where it was held. And what a tremendous time we had. Thank you for the privilege to be with you. One of the things that really stuck out to me about that weekend, and we have been trying to get this set up ever since then, was they set aside some time for a pastor's kids or preacher's kids, and this will be a term, a PK luncheon, where they were all brought together and they provided a venue where questions could be presented to a table that was comprised of a number of ministers, and they just really focused on preachers' kids, and that was one of the most riveting things of the weekend for me. The church service was great. Preaching was a bit on the short side.
Oh, who preached?
I don't mean time-wise, but short on the expectation. But the luncheon was off the chain. And this has been something that Pastor Hare has had a burden for, and that is preachers' kids. So we wanted to have him come on today and talk a bit about that. So, but before we jump into that, I want to talk about a preacher's kid, and that is Jace. God definitely miraculously touched Jace Hare. He was in an accident playing ball. You want to give us a little rundown on that?
Well, thank you for asking. First, let's go back to that PK lunch. And the reason why it was off the chain is because you were one of the panelists.
Oh,
So let's get that record straight. And we are grateful. It's been a wonderful opportunity to host that. But thank you for asking about Jace. Jace is 18, and about 10 days before he graduated, they were playing ball at the church and slid into home plate. They came and got me, said there was an accident, and I had no idea it was Jace or what was the issue. But to get to where it got critical, he was not responding, ended up having to call an ambulance. We went to the emergency room, and they found out his skull was fractured. Had a lot of injuries, but the critical issue was his skull was fractured. And we were reminded again of how precious life was.
Wow.
We went immediately to ICU. The doctor was crying. And of course, Mom and Dad did too. But it makes me so grateful to be part of such a powerful church, people calling and praying and visiting. And we're thankful to say that is a memory now. Jace has went through his surgery. He's completed his therapy. He's released by all doctors. He started back to university yesterday, and we expect a full recovery.
Oh, thank God.
That's awesome.
Thank you to God. Thanks for asking about him. Thank you for your prayers.
Absolutely. Such a great young man. Plays some serious guitar. My goodness. Yeah.
We're blessed.
Yeah. So, to those that are listening to us, what's a PK? That wouldn't know.
I think it depends on who you ask.
I was going to say, we want the bad story first.
Well, it's an abbreviation for punk. One.
There we go. There we go. It just
And
depends
I
on
say
which.
that because I feel like we have eminent qualifications. I'm a PK and I married a PK.
There we go.
We've often heard it rotten PKs,
Yes.
but it's something obviously dear to my heart. And Brother McKillop, I think when you think about a call to the ministry, and you've been through the same background I have. You grow up in church. You hear where God is audibly speaking to men, calling them into the ministry. At least they feel a compelling, drawing to God. But to my knowledge, nobody ever has had a calling to be a PK. They had no options.
So good.
And it's something that they just grow up in. And I am so thankful to have had the raising and the training that I was given. My parents did not. I think there's so much to be said about the power of perception. It's over half the battle. It's if you can get your perception right and your the disposition that you take, that's over half the battle. And how you look at things. I was never put on a pedestal and never made to think that it was a burden. But
and boy, that's the balance, isn't it?
Yes. And I had never been to a PK event. We of course, raising our children. I want them to feel like they love their life.
Yes.
And so we constantly tried to provide outlets. I thought this was a great opportunity to bring people with similar backgrounds together, not to try to form an elite club, not to have a therapy section, but just to bounce ideas off of one another and use what God has given us. It's a great opportunity to influence others. And we've been doing that for about 10 years. And we really love it. Look forward to it every year.
Man, I really do salute you for that. It was a special moment for me being there now as a pastor, but being able to relate to being a preacher's kid. That
right.
Man, it was an invaluable moment. I want to circle back to something that you said. I don't know if you've heard in the pre-show, we were talking about Brother Marks being with you this past weekend. I don't know if you've heard Brother Marks' message. I heard him preach it, I believe, the first time at No Limits, like 2010, something like that. Were you guys even born then?
No.
I was. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What was that word? Punk? Young punks? Way back in 2010. But he talked about it, and he specifically highlighted the pastor's wife when he used the example that God called Abraham, God spoke to Abraham. But Sarah only heard Abraham repeat what God had said.
Yeah.
And so placing this even farther down the demographic of a pastoral family, children, and that's something that I think may be lost on a lot of people. They are not called to this position.
Right.
That's a powerful, speaking of perception, that's a powerful perception that the church needs to know and they need to know.
Absolutely. I'm living proof that parents, they can shape the mindset of a child. I believe you can drive them to ministry or away from wanting to ever have anything to do with it by simply how you view issues. Somebody came recently and took them back to this dream childhood area that I grew up in. And amazingly enough, the big lake that I was raised up on, it's shrunk into a small little pond.
Yeah.
But I was raised in a mobile home, just constantly on the move. Our community had about 500 people in it. End of a dirt road. They had potholes big enough to fish in. We never had a new vehicle in our family until the church bought my dad a new truck for his 25th anniversary.
Wow.
But believe me when I tell you, I thought we were rich.
Sure.
I thought, it was just the life of Riley. They never came home and grumbled. They never threw negativity about the church. And I grew up thinking it was just the greatest opportunity ever. And you know what? I still believe that. It is a blessing.
I do too. That kind of reminds me, you talking about parents being able to shape the perspectives and the thinking of their children. That's a major thing, because you and I had this discussion before I came. You sent kind of a list of potential questions that would be presented at the luncheon. And I told you, and I believe Brother Burgess had the same story, that I don't have any sad stories as a preacher's kid.
Right.
I thought I lived the dream, man. But my dad,
Right.
I can remember my dad telling a story, and I'm going to try to be as anonymous here as I can, about riding down the road in a vehicle, and a pastor sitting in the front seat, speaking to him as a younger man, saying, "This pastoring will kill you." And him talking about how, my goodness, that's not how I view what God has called me to do.
Absolutely.
So how would that affect that pastor's kids if they were sitting in that car going down the road?
Something that I credit. Well, I didn't so much credit him then, but I credit my dad now. Is there was only one standard applied in the church, and growing up, I remember talking about just moments, that just affect you the rest of your life. I was probably 4 or 5 years old, and in Sunday school, and it definitely wouldn't have been my fault, but my teacher got on to me.
Oh, yes.
And so I felt it incumbent upon me to inform her.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I happen to be the pastor's son.
Do you know who I am?
When I got out of class, I was going to go tell my daddy.
Woo.
And she smiled at me and she said, you ought to just do that. And I did, but I never did it anymore after that.
Do you care to expound on why you arrived at the decision that you wouldn't do that anymore?
Something to do with the Board of Correction.
Is that a church board or?
Well, our board was a little different. It was about 3 foot long.
Okay.
It was wooden. Yeah.
Yeah. One person sat on it at a time.
Well,
Mhm.
and it was,
Mhm.
if it was kept at the church, it would still be a church board.
Yeah. Yeah.
My sister, they pastor in Carthage, Mississippi now. Interesting enough, had a desire to go into the ministry. He's a preacher's kid. And might I say, I'd like to hear your opinion on that, but you're not automatically qualified or expected to become a preacher if your parents are in ministry.
Oh, that's so
But
good.
neither should it disqualify you.
Absolutely.
But nonetheless, we were drawn to working for God. And so as we grew up, Robin nor myself, we were never a dumping ground for the negative things of the church. My dad, he was quite a colorful man, and he would always boast and say, my church, I pastor a church with no problems. Well, everybody would just kind of raise their eyebrows, and he would follow it up and say, now, I pastor a church. The people here may have some problems, but the church has got no problems. But he left it at that. He never came home and discussed that with us. He never, if there was something we needed to be, warned from, or maybe even involved in a situation that we needed correction, of course we knew about it, but they never dumped. It was not, the fact that we were PKs was not a depressing subject.
Wow.
It was, we felt like the church was the happiest place on earth.
Wow.
So
wow.
I'm thankful for that perception.
That is so massive, because if there's anything that I can appreciate looking back on my upbringing, was how my dad sheltered me.
Yes.
From the very obvious, looking back in retrospect, the very obvious issues that I could have gotten entangled in. And whenever I'm around that now, and I hear discussions, this is not a popular thing, what I'm fixing to say, but it really fits even broader than just preachers' kids. There are some conversations that kids should just not be a part of.
I agree.
And so they're not little people. They are children, and there's a degree of innocence that needs to be preserved in the eyes of those children.
I agree. I dealt with an issue as a pastor. It was a terrible situation, and the parent was just weeping uncontrollably. Of course, the children were there, and they came in. It was just one of those moments. It was very tense, and so mom's crying, the children are crying.
Right.
Well, immediately I said, you know what? Why don't we let this little girl go outside? So they went out with the children in the backyard, and we prepared to help the lady. And it was she had a lot of reason to be crying.
Sure.
But I learned something while I was sitting there. I could see behind her in that backyard. So her daughter walks out from just sobbing and all upset within 5 minutes. When she got into a different environment,
wow,
with children there, she was laughing, playing, jumping on that trampoline. And I'm convinced, yes, they should be sheltered. Life will bring them issues soon enough, right, without them having to do quickly. And my parents did that for us,
Yes.
Hey, I should say this. And I'm talking a lot.
This is great. This is great.
Well, tough times, they don't last.
Yep.
Tough people last.
Right.
And, to say that the church is the happiest place on earth, and to say that PK life was a blessed life, I believe that. That's not to say that there's not disappointment and not critical times. We were blessed, but it was not trouble-free. Our family was the target of a murder plot. They tried to run my father off, and it was not an empty threat. When I was 8 years old, someone came in the church and murdered the evangelist. during the church service. I remember going home and they piled furniture up on our door, not knowing who was coming next. Our church burned to the ground. We had church in a school cafeteria. We went into a storefront. My dad scrapped and bought and sold and built a new church. And then, of course, just recently, we were hit directly by a hurricane. And then 6 weeks later, another hurricane came. We're having church right now in a white tent. But you know what, Brother McKillop? You know what? The church has not scattered. It hasn't declined. It's just...
Yeah, and how long have you been having church in that white tent?
Well, September will make 2 years.
There. Yeah, I just wanted the folks to know.
Better laugh than cry.
What's that?
I tell them that Moses had 40 years in the wilderness in the tabernacle. We're chasing that, but we don't want to catch it.
Yeah, I just wanted to point that out. If anybody was listening to this isn't just a 6-week tent revival. This has been a deal.
No, it was not. It was not an intentional tent revival either.
Right.
Not a plan one. But it has been wonderful. It has been wonderful.
So through all of those adversities, you still have emerged from that saying that life was good.
Life was good.
Wow.
My wife, God, she's a PK, and she's my much better half, by the way.
Yeah.
The only worry I have about her, I lived a good life, best I could, and God gave me the desires of my heart. Why on earth she got stuck with me, I'm wondering how she lived as a child.
The
You have to
judgment.
take that up with God. But Julie always says, she's like, John, everybody does not like you. And I said, oh, yes, they do. They may not know it yet.
Yeah.
They need me to convince them. That's my mentality, how I've been brought up. It's a happy life. It's a good life.
Yes.
Responsibilities will come soon enough, but we take that luncheon opportunity for PKs and bring in men who are accomplished, who have been where they're at, and they're there to answer. We had I felt like great questions brought up by the PKs.
Incredible.
And every situation is not idyllic, but with God in a proper mindset, you'll come through. And we have to believe, do we not, that He is the author and the finisher of our faith. That
Yes.
Sometimes He may not explain why we are facing a particular circumstance, but it may not even be to be revealed until 10, 15 years later. And He allowed us to endure some things that we could help someone else. So I view it much more as a privilege than a burden to be in the life of growing up in the home of a minister.
Right. So how, if I could ask a question, and so much of what you've said over the last few moments has been about finding the right balance. So, for example, you said, because I'm a preacher's kid, that doesn't mean I have to be in the ministry, but yet it doesn't mean that I can't be in the ministry. So it's about finding what that balance is. And one of those other ones that I would like you to talk a bit more about, and I'm very curious of your opinion, is how, as a preacher's kid myself, and now raising a son, how do I keep the right balance in that child from being an elitist, because I am a preacher's kid, and I'll talk to my dad as soon as this class is over, and I'll eat what I want out of the fridge in the church kitchen, and I'll do whatever I want to do because, bless God, I'm the preacher's kid, to the pendulum swinging so far the other way that the preacher's kid becomes the one that is always on the peripheral, and he's the example that's used for everything. And
in the fishbowl.
Yeah, he's living in a fishbowl. Exactly. Constantly, every one of his actions scrutinized to the place where he doesn't have the privilege of just being a kid. How do you find that balance?
Wow. Well, I put a lot of responsibility and opportunity on Dad.
Yes.
You know, you take a case in point, Moses, meekest man, just like your host here, meekest man in all the earth. But you know, even a sinner could see that what Moses was doing, it was not going to work for long. He was stretched. You know, God used him to be the deliverer. He would go and fast 40 days and 40 nights. He's doing all this staring down Pharaoh. But as far as I can read, the only thing we see Moses doing as far as interacting with his sons, all I read is that he circumcised them, you know?
Wow.
But I never read of them. I never read of them pursuing his calling, you know, or having anything to do with it. I believe our children need to see us wearing other hats than the preacher hat. You know, a fishing hat. Heard you talking about fishing. An adventure hat, a funny hat, and of course bring the things of God to them. I feel like it starts with mom and dad on how they're structuring this child. There cannot be a double standard in the home. If they see it, if they, you know, we may fool some people, but we're not going to fool our children. They see us, and if they know that dad loves them, I've been corrected. I remember to this day, I try not to talk when people are praying, because my dad did the scriptural thing. While he was praying and all heads bowed and all, he was watching and praying. And I was making jokes while that was going on, but I stopped because he stopped and said, "John and Aaron," I said, "every head bowed." Well, I got the point. Yeah. But so did every other child in that church. It wasn't just John. It wasn't just Aaron.
Right.
But and I'm thankful for that.
Yes.
I'm thankful for that. It gives me identity that I'm not
above
Prince John, you know. Yep. I'm not on some pedestal.
Yes.
But he's not kicking me around either.
Yes.
And
well, obviously, you know, he would have done that to another young guy sitting there if he'd have been doing it. So it's kind of a level. Yeah.
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 Yeah. I think now I kind of strayed a little bit from your question. We need to go back in there, but thinking of the home structure, and look, I'm preaching to myself as well. We're building a church, and just seems like there's never a time when we're not busy.
Right.
But is our pace sustainable? I think of where Jesus said, let's go to the desert place. Let's go to the other side. And he said, let's rest a while.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we know that Jesus didn't have to have rest. He is the rest.
Sure. Sure.
He's the living water, the bread of life. But I believe he did that for our example, that even the busiest among us should take time and go to the other side and take our own family and invest in one another. You come back charged up, and our children need to know that they are special to us. Yes. And they are, I'm sure we feel the same way. I want to save everyone I come in contact with.
Yes.
But I believe that God understands and wants me above anyone. I want to save my family.
Oh,
number one priority.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There's a good thrust for while we're doing the PK luncheon. These pastors and their wives, they're serving and working and ministering, but oftentimes it's so easy, not intentionally, but we just turn around and 8 months are gone and we haven't been able to connect and focus on our children. I know I've been guilty of that, but that's something that we want to continually do with this PK. Just give them a time. Again, not to make them you're better and something, like you said, an elitist club. It's not that. God's not into that. Right. But at the same time, this is our heritage. Yes. This is our heritage. What do you think? I think oftentimes as the PK goes, so goes the youth group.
Oh, absolutely.
And wow, if we miss it, we're not only going to damage our own heritage, but the work of God. Conversely, let the PKs be on fire for God and involved in the work of God, and you'll see others.
The youth group do it. Yes, you
will. That absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, and I think you would agree at a certain age. I mean, obviously, younger, it may not be the same exact scenario, but when they get into their teen years, mid-teens and up, they often have as great of an influence on their peers, or greater than what you or I would have as a pastor.
By all means. By all means.
Yep.
Yes.
So that just underscores the importance again of, but really that becomes, if we're not careful, we're having that discussion and preachers' kids are listening to us right now, it can become a subconscious burden upon them too.
Right.
Right.
And Brother McKillop, I think they should keep this in mind. Now, I don't believe you're God anointed to be, God calls the ministry, and then they're just tools that come along with it. Like you said, Sarah or the children, and they have an impact, but we shouldn't think too highly of ourselves, but we shouldn't ignore our position either. And I think the concept that I try to remember is, we're not the Messiah. We're just a messenger. And if you're a preacher's kid and you're surrounded by hellions and people are, you feel all of that pressure, well, you're going to let me digress. I did. I tried to live a circumspect life. It was definitely far from perfect. I mentioned this at the PK luncheon that people did not want to hang around me that were doing wrong. Case in point, we had a youth trip, and some of the guys, they went to the hotel. They were going to, watch something. They were going to turn on the TV. So, I was probably 12, 13, and those boys were a good bit older, and they wouldn't let me come in. I said, let me come in. No, you're going to tell your dad. And no. And so they let me in, and they were right. When it got dark that night, back to my parents, I went in there and said, nah, Daddy, I watch TV, and so did so-and-so and so-and-so.
We're in this boat together.
But it does cause some separation. There are people that are not doing just right, but never forget, you're not the Messiah there. Just live your life. Some are going to plant, some are going to water, but it's only God that's going to give the increase. There will be people that backslide, and you just need to keep your identity. Know who you are and know whose you are. You're a child of the King. Yes. You're a royal priesthood. Yes. A chosen generation. God's got his hand on your life. And if you stay focused on that, you'll face some peer pressure, but it's not bad for you. It's not bad for you.
Right.
It makes you, it forms your identity. And to quote a great scholar of our day, Pastor Daniel McKillop, he said this, now you correct me, but this is what I took from the PK luncheon, is you said that people can damage your reputation, but they cannot touch your character.
Right.
And if you focus on keeping your character, you'll eventually get your reputation back as well.
Yes.
And I thought that's a great point to keep in mind. Focus on, you're not going to be perfect, but use that altar just like anyone else would. And you know what? You do right long enough, there are people that they want a role model. They want a voice in their generation. Not everyone, but they will follow you. And so that's what our hope is, as we, every year when we host that, to just leave them encouraged and equipped that you can be a difference maker now, and should be.
Yes.
As you grow up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there, this is so good, but is there any specific application to this as it relates even to missionary kids? Because in addition to overall ministry and the uniqueness of my dad's the pastor, and there's some kids that don't want to hang around me because I'm going to tell them that they were my dad. We were all watching TV last night. Or you've got the other side of the spectrum. So we've kind of danced through that. There's another level to missions where they're even pulled out, excuse me, out of the culture of their home country.
Yeah.
And then they find themselves more tied to a foreign culture or a third world culture, and they come back. And do you have any input on how that particular child keeps his equilibrium?
Wow.
I believe it was Brother Matt Tuttle that I heard referring to this at Little Rock Camp meeting. Him, just basically struggling internally with bitterness and because I'm being drugged off to a country that doesn't have McDonald's or he was listing those issues.
Yeah, I heard that, and I that's not my background, so I really it would just be an opinion, but certainly people who have lived it could speak much better to it than I could. My heart goes out to children of missionaries.
Yes.
Matter of fact, we brought some in to some of our meetings for that purpose. And it's a different dynamic, not only the typical PK life, but there you are, you're not even surrounded by your peers. And I would just have to think that God has his hand on them, and he may be using them for, as I said earlier, they may be in a quiet place, or as David was, honing his craft in isolation. But don't lose the importance of the moment by waiting. Well, if I can get to this conference, or God knows exactly where we all are, and he will sustain us. His grace is sufficient for us. You're going to have a different perspective. Just like you said, the message that Brother Tuttle preached, I mean, who better to say it than a mission job? But he didn't use that as a crutch. He's used that now as a weapon that look what God can do. And so it's definitely a different dynamic, but it's not a handicap. And I think you should lean on mom and dad. You're in a culture, affect the culture around you.
Yes.
And you have that power. You have that opportunity. And again, I say I didn't live that, so I don't want to sound hollow in telling you something that I didn't live. But I know there are many successful missionary children. I think of so impressed with Jacob Azar. Man, he's dynamic in what he's doing. Yes. And my hat is off to them.
Yeah, and you look at I agree. A great man. You see it with the Lambeth family, how it's passed off from generation
absolutely
to generation. They've obviously mastered that balance of all of those dynamics that we've been talking about today.
Mm-hmm.
We got into one more area, and I'd like maybe to talk about it a bit before we wind down here, and that was the whole concept of it's my pastor and it's my dad. And I don't have the ability to go talk to my pastor like everybody else in their youth group does without their parents sitting in eavesdropping on that conversation. So my dad's got these hats, and how do I talk to dad about that?
Every conversation is a conversation with the pastor.
Yeah.
Oh, poor Jaron.
Yeah. And I believe it was you that brought up maybe the importance of other voices that you have set up and given guidance to your kids.
Yes. I preached a message one time on things that I learned from my daddy's chair. And that was just a spot in our house. My dad, when he would come home in the evening, he had a recliner, and it had the manual lift. And so most of the time it was Robin, but ever so often I would get in trouble. And probably she got me into it. But anyway, he'd be sitting there reading his newspaper. And boy, he had this distinct voice, and he would say, "Mr. Hare," and he'd start this long process of folding his newspaper up, taking his glasses off. Then I could hear the recliner pop up. And once that happened, it was like a final deal. You were fixing to get a thrashing. But I realize now, after I have 2 teenage children, he was cooling off so he didn't kill me.
Yeah.
But
not going to handle that metal while it's hot.
Yeah. There was that chair represented many things. We would also climb up. I would climb up in that chair and lay on my dad's chest, and we would talk. And I feel like I'm blessed more than most because I had a very close relationship with my father. I want to have that with my children. I think that I just pray that they feel comfortable in talking to me and my wife, that we love them and they can trust us as parents, not just some mystical,
spiritual
distant
figurehead,
spirit guru.
Right.
That's my son and my daughter,
right.
But you're exactly right. I believe, just like you said, there's a time where our children will have more influence on the youth group, or at least a different impact and a significant impact on the youth group than we will. I believe in the life of every teenager or our children, there's going to come a moment where someone else has more sway and more influence on our children than we do. I hate to admit that, but I believe it. And so I believe that it's imperative that we find voices, people of character, way ahead of time, that we build relationships with. So in that time where our child is needing a voice, we have the right voice in their lives.
Yes.
And that's where our circle of influence is so critical. I've sought for those voices, my children's life. They're going to not rob from me and my wife, but they're going to add to. So
right, they're not vying for the influence that you have.
No,
reinforcing it.
No.
Right.
That's a byproduct of the PK event, to forge those relationships.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And I'm telling you, I know I've already said it, but I think that venue is one that is so needed. And
thanks. We're excited about it. Matter of fact, you heard of the Addams family?
Yes.
Not the Hollywood, not the Hollywood group. We've got the Apostolic Addams family this year. Brother Caleb out of West Virginia. There are 8 children raised in a PK home.
Yes.
And so, Brother Caleb Adams, Brother Tim Adams, Brother Joey Adams, they're girls, they're married into ministry.
Yep.
Who?
Is it Samuel? I think there's a brother named Samuel.
Yeah, absolutely. That entire family, 7 of them are going to come and tell their story. Now, of course, they've been extremely successful in life and very involved in ministry. And this is going to be unique. Yeah, they're going to come.
That is awesome.
Yeah. we're excited about that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, man. Do you have any parting advice you want to leave with us before we bring it to a close? This has been so good.
Well, look at it. My great-grandmother, Sister Agnes Holmes, used to say this about, she would always correct people if they said, I have to go to church. You know, she said, no, I get to go to church.
Wow.
It's not a pressure. It's a privilege to go to church. And I view that same mindset when it comes to PK life. Challenges, yes. Demands on mom and dad's time, absolutely. But it's a privilege. It's a blessing. There's so many perks that come with it. And to be able to, you have the opportunity, you were just born with it. You didn't choose that, but you were born as a PK. Look around. You can lift people up. And when we learn to serve versus, focusing on our feelings and the disadvantages, life is so much richer. And I pray for PKs. That's why we've invested in this. We believe in it, and so you're the voice for your generation and to come. So live it to the fullest.